Thank you for tuning into this edition of Webinars for Busy Lawyers. These webinars are designed to bring you practical information in just 20 to 30 minutes. By practical, we mean that you can implement what you learn here in your practice immediately. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Dorna Moini. Dorna is the CEO and co-founder of Documate, a no-code legal automation platform. Prior to starting Documate, Dorna was a litigator at Sidley Austin. Dorna is on the Legal Services Corporation, Emerging Leaders Council, and a member of the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles' advisory board. She was named an ABA Legal Rebel and a Fastcase 50 honoree. She also teaches the Legal Innovations Lab at USC Law School. So at this point, Dorna, thank you so much for joining us. I'll give it over to you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and talking about legal commoditization. So hi everyone, I am Dorna Moini. I'm the CEO of Documate, and I don't practice anymore, but I'm an attorney in California. I've spent the past 4 years advising a lot of our clients on turning their legal services into legal products and coming up with alternative business models. So during this time, the landscape of e-lawyering has changed dramatically. And today, we have a lot of people who we're building tools for members of the public. So let's get started. So I just want to start with this quote up here. More and more legal services will be enabled by the support of new technology. You can say that's for the technology industry to sort out, or you can be part of the technology industry. So that's a quote from Richard Susskind, who some of you may know. He studies the future of the profession. And over the past 30 years, he's made lots of predictions about today's knowledge workers and the people and systems that will replace them. So many of those predictions have panned out. And he argues that many current service professions are antiquated, are no longer affordable, and that increasingly capable systems are going to fundamentally change the way that professional expertise is shared. So with that pretty dreary outlook, why are we here today? That's what the opportunity is that we now need to quickly seize and adapt to. So the opportunity, that I'm talking about, is what we call the latent legal market. So what's that? The latent legal market refers to the untapped potential of all the would-be legal clients who aren't currently using legal services to solve their legal issues. And as a result, it also refers to all of the unrealized revenue that law firms could generate if only they focused on providing that experience that these would-be clients are looking for. I know that a lot of people sometimes hate hearing about the death of the traditional billable hour. But when we're talking about legal products, I really want you to think of the billable hour as a cap on your revenue. There are only a certain number of hours in the day. There's only a certain max your fee can be increased to. And there's only a certain portion of the population who can afford it. That's why e-lawyering is so important. So let's kind of lay the groundwork here. Commoditization. It's a little bit of a dirty word to many lawyers, but the continuum of services that you can provide really range from what you see on the screen here. They range from bespoke services. Think of this as the traditional way that a client comes into your office, documents drafted from a blank slate, completely customized questions that you're asking the client, completely unique work product. That bespoke service is never going to go away. There's always going to be a certain work that can only be custom, where there are no rules, where there are no templates. But what we want to talk about today is standardization, systematization, and then externalization. So standardization is probably what many of you already have at your firms, those templates that you have with the brackets around different terms, footnotes, highlighting. Systematization is taking that one step further to use technology to automate those templates and those checklists that you may have in the standardization phase. And then externalization is allowing third parties to collaborate and engage in the process. So you can involve your clients, involve potential clients, maybe even create a tool that's free for the public. And that is where, when we think in that realm, everything kind of on the right-hand side of this spectrum, when we think about that realm, that's where we're going to come up with creative business models to serve members of the public and really be able to scale our services, because it's not just about, it no longer becomes about the one-to-one relationship, but about the one-to-many or one-to-all kind of relationship. So to illustrate this, I actually want to tell you guys about our story at Documate and some of the parallels it holds across the legal field, because we actually started with wanting to build a very specific product in one area of law. So I think maybe it's illustrative for this area. So 5 years ago, I was practicing, and in my practice, I also did some pro bono work with domestic violence survivors. At later stages of the case, the work could get really complex. But the first 10 to 15 hours of pretty much any case was spent on routine form-based work, asking the client for basic information, filling it out across potentially 20 different forms, depending on whether they needed spousal or child support or other orders. Thinking about what conditions were supposed to be triggered on other forms. So we knew there were rules, but every time that we generated documents for our clients, we were thinking about them each time. So the work was mostly being done in a bespoke manner, but also partially standardized. Given that this was our pro bono work, it was the pro bono work that I did in my practice, that meant that I quickly ran out of time to spend on later stages of the case, such as fact-intensive application of the law, or actually doing research or representing the client at their hearing. So what did we do? We validated Apple's slogan. We made an app for that. We basically created a TurboTax for domestic violence, if you will, for taking care of all of the initial stages of the case: intake, data entry, data storage, document automation. So what did that mean for the rest of the case? That meant that not only could we serve many more people, but it also meant that we could spend our valuable time on representing the client in court, drafting and responding to motions, taking on the appeal. So building automation into the process really helped us scale the services and the types of services that we could provide. So let's talk a little bit more about what some of these new legal service delivery models are. When we're talking about making our practice more efficient and being able to scale the services that we provide, what do we mean in terms of, what does that look like in terms of business models and external facing tools? So I have some of them written down here, and these kind of go along a spectrum as well, starting with the one that's most minimal to the most extensive. So starting with informational products. These are things that you guys probably already have, and you don't even think of them already as products. If you have a blog, if you have content that you're providing to your clients, if you have checklists, those are informational products that you're already putting out into the world. Oftentimes, and we can talk about pricing as well, but oftentimes the informational products are not charged for. So they are used as a lead generator. When you're thinking about pricing your legal products, you want to think about it in two buckets: lead generating tools and revenue generating tools. So you may have tons of free tools that you put out there into the world. Users are using them, and they're maybe not paying you immediately, but those are going to become leads in the future. Or you may be putting out your products because you want to immediately start generating revenue. And so you're going to build a robust product, you're going to market that yourself, and you're gonna get it out there so that people can start paying you, or maybe your current clients can start paying you for that. So informational products, typically lead generating and mainly content. Second bucket, internally generated, but flat fee potentially services that are aided by technology. So where we see this is where law firms implement technology in-house inside of their firm, but they are not necessarily making that, that technology available or visible to the client. So for example, maybe you're doing some data entry into the system, and that's going to generate different documents or different document sets for yourself in-house, and it significantly increases your productivity and efficiency, because what may have taken you 6 hours might take 1 hour or half an hour, because you've set up all the proper rules for it to be able to populate things and generate the right documents, because these can get super complex and really robust. But you're not making it client-facing. Third category, data collaboration between the lawyer and the client, is where you are going to be involving that client. So oftentimes what we see here is doing this through a client intake process. So you may send out a client intake to one of your clients, or you may put something onto your website where data can be entered in, and your client fills it all out. And at the end of the process, you get the information, the data, and you also get the documents. But the client doesn't actually see the end document until you've reviewed it. And they think they're just filling out an intake form, but really on your end, you're making and speeding up that process significantly, because you're collecting data in a more efficient way, and you're pushing that into your documents on the back end without you having to manually do it. Next one is subscription form sites. That is becoming a really hot topic right now. There are probably so many areas that many of you have templates for. And so, for example, when I was practicing, I did a lot of employment law, and we would often get requests for employee offer letters and employee packets. We would get requests for separation agreements, severance agreements, specific things that you needed to fill out for different stages of an employee. And in most cases, we were just taking our templates and filling in that information for the client, sending it back to them. So what if you could build a tool for something like that, or other areas of law that have templates like that, where you could give the customer, your client, access to that subscription platform, and then you could kind of sit back and allow them to generate their documents on their own, and you would collect a subscription fee instead. Sometimes people get scared of the subscription fee one, or the form sites, because they say, well, there are certain situations in which I would want my client to be talking to me about the severance agreement that they're about to generate. So what's interesting is you can actually incorporate some of those situations, those potential pitfalls and those obstacles into these form sites, so that you can flag certain issues for customers as well. So as an example, in that employment context, I would probably be worried that when someone is providing a severance agreement or a separation agreement, they need to make sure that they have looked at, first of all, if there's some kind of layoff, or the people are over 40, there's certain disclosures you need to give. But also making sure that there's nothing in that person's HR file that indicates they could be a litigation risk. Those are questions that you can ask within your form site. So you can flag things and kick people out of the process and say, hey, you have told me that this is an employee who has complained multiple times about being discriminated against, and this just happened last week, and you're firing her today. So let's have a chat. This is not the typical situation where you can just send them the separation agreement, but this is a situation where you actually need to talk to the lawyer. So those types of things can be incorporated in. Next two are the TurboTax model. Some people call it the TurboTax model, or the LegalZoom model, where you're really providing end-to-end technology. This could be document automation. This could be decision automation. But what it means is that you're putting something out onto the internet, and you're having your client go through the entire process and generate the documents for themselves. You don't need to do anything or be any part of that. And a lot of people are doing this, and what we find is one of the decisions that firms often make is, when you're building something that's going to be more of a TurboTax model, are you building something that you want to be as part of your core law firm? Or are you building something that is going to be a wholly separate entity? So if it's going to be part of your core law firm, you may want to, it may be within the realm of the types of clients you already have. And you're really just trying to make it, you're trying to show your customers that you're a tech forward law firm. But you could also make it as a separate legal entity. And that's what we see a lot of folks do, especially if they're going to provide some type of technology where it's a different clientele than their main clientele at the law firm. And so they want to brand it differently and name it something different. So as an example, we have a client, Hello Divorce. They are a divorce law platform. And what they do is they have their main law firm, which is where they do a lot of litigation, and they're contested cases and very contentious litigation. They also have their tech company, Hello Divorce, but their tech company is catering to uncontested divorces that are very amicable and a very different clientele. So they're marketing differently towards those two groups. So for that reason, because of the different groups and because those clients don't usually overlap, they decided to create two different entities and kind of give it more of a tech spin. So the last one I want to touch on is the combination tech and advice. So this one is what you would be, let's say you wanted to create technology, but you also wanted to allow your clients to come back to you afterwards and ask additional questions. So what we often see with the combination tech and advice is, are you, you have the technology that's generating the documents, and then maybe you add on 2 or 3 hours of legal review. You're reviewing their legal documents. And then you pass it back over to them, but you charge them some extra fee for that. Or maybe you say, you can have 2 hours of consultation with me, and you consult with them for 2 hours or a certain very specific amount of time. What I think is really important is when you're creating the combination tech and advice tools, those packaged services, you want to really make sure that you are creating a very precise bucket of information and services that they're going to be taking advantage of, because that's one of the main things is you don't want them to think they can now get as many hours of your time as they want. You want to say, this is a product, this is exactly what's included in it. Anything above that, we're very clear that that's additional hourly services. And so that whether you want that or not can be also something that you include inside of your terms. So what I want to do next is I want to just go through a few examples. I know we only have a few more minutes and then we'll jump to questions. I want to go through a few different examples of some firms who have done this, who have built out different types of tools, and give you some inspiration, hopefully. So first example I've thrown up here is a company called Lavax. They're a law firm. And what they've done is they've built a lead generating tool that you see up on the screen here. So they have created this personal property memorandum generator. It's a DIY personal property memorandum generator. And anyone can come on to their site, generate that personal property memorandum, and then go ahead and move along and continue with their lives, and it's all completely free. However, what they see is this because they gave them access to this tool, these folks are coming back for when they want to generate their wills and trusts and any other documents in their estate planning process. And then Lavax has paid services and revenue generating products just like this that they provide to them. The next one is an example of a subscription platform. So this one is called Landlord Legal, also stems out of a law firm who has created a tech company on the side. And what they have done is they've basically created this site where they have a variety of different things. So I think this one's interesting because they've combined education, a knowledge base, and automated documents. So starting with, you can see, well, this is just their front end website. They charge you, it's actually very affordable, $250 a year. It's for landlords. And what they can do is they come on to the site and they have videos that landlords can watch to inform them about different parts of the legal process. They have a knowledge base where people can ask questions and see what answers have been given by, what content the lawyers have built out. And then they also have document automation where the lawyer can come on, the landlord can come on and enter all their information and generate different leases for all the different properties that they have across the board. I'm going to just give you two more examples and then we'll jump over to questions. The Hello Divorce one, I've just put this one up on the board because I think this one's an interesting one in terms of pricing models, because they kind of meet you where you want to be. Whether you are the type of person who just wants some free services, that's the starter, or maybe you're the type of person who you go to the grocery store and you don't want to talk to anyone, so you want to just do the self-checkout. That would be the DIY divorce. Or if you want all the hand-holding and additional hours of legal coaching, you can choose the divorce with benefits, which I love the name of. So they've really kind of created a pricing model and a level of involvement that meets clients where they are. And I think that's a really interesting one. And then the last one I want to show you is this one called LCN Legal. And they are, the reason I want to show you this one is because so far I think I've shown you a lot that are either small business or consumer facing. LCN Legal is a law firm that services all very large financial institutions, and they're very robust calculations that need to be done in all of their documents. So they've built out this tool for tax and transfer pricing, and they have their financial institutions who are using this on a regular basis. They've also translated it into 3 different languages. So they, I think on this screen it just says English and Chinese, but they now also have a Portuguese version. So that's what's really interesting is once you build something in one language, you can duplicate and change up the language and translate it to make sure that it's perfect. So I am going to stop there, but I do see that there are quite a few questions inside of the chat. And there are lots of questions about kind of like legal malpractice and providing, when do you, I guess the underlying question from a lot of these is when are you creating an attorney-client privilege and what are the things that you need to do? I do actually have a few slides that I can throw up on that, although I will obviously say that, what I have in terms of information is kind of overall across the board. So make sure to look into specifically what the Massachusetts rules have said if there are updates there. So let me just pull up a few. So in terms of when are you kind of creating that relationship, what's important is, are you creating an attorney-client relationship? And the distinction that is usually made in a lot of the case law is whether it's legal information or whether it's legal advice. And so if the law is a little bit sparse here and kind of all over the place. So we have to take from the landscape of anything that's happened in the entire US. But really, LegalZoom has actually made a lot of interesting headway on this topic because they have fought these battles in pretty much every state. But what the cases have found is that selling forms doesn't amount to the unauthorized practice of law, as long as the client is really merely being given kind of like a manual, even if it's a detailed one with specific advice. And as long as you're not personally advising the client regarding their specific case, then you're not creating that attorney-client relationship. I think one other consideration that I'll throw up here is disclaimers. You should, if you're going to be creating a tool where you don't want to create an attorney-client relationship, where you're just providing a tool online that's not going to be part of your relationship with the client under an engagement letter, you should, the ABA Commission on Ethics and Professional Responsibility has said that you should use a reasonably understandable, properly placed, and not misleading warning or disclaimer that you don't provide legal services. So I know that's very vague, but that's the guidance that we have so far. And it's generally accepted that a disclaimer like that is sufficient unless you act or communicate to the client in a way that's contrary to that disclaimer. I'll take a look at what other questions are in this chat as well.
Yeah, I don't see any questions apart from those ethics related questions, although there's another, I thought there was one message I hadn't seen. All right, we do have another. What is the best way to identify repeated case types or clients that may lend themselves to a profitable LegalZoom Hello Divorce model? For example, forms, client-generated docs, subscription, etc.
Yeah, so that's a great question. That goes to, how do you decide what your first product is going to be? And I think that scoping, the process of just determining what the scope of your first product is going to be is super important. I like to say start small, think big, and iterate quickly. So start small with something that that is self-contained and that you can test with your customers. And you're going to want to identify the field and area that's good for that. You're going to want something that's both form-based or rules-based and is done at a high volume. So for example, divorce or estate planning, those are good areas because for the most part, you're using either court forms or your own internal templates. And so they are pretty, even though they can be very complicated, don't get me wrong, they lend themselves to that if this or this, then this relationship in terms of when you're setting it up. So as long as you have that kind of rules-based system, then it's great for this model. But keep in mind that it should also be something that you're doing at a high volume. If you're just doing that once a year, then that's not it's not as valuable to automate something like that and put it out there in the world because it's not going to be scalable. But if it's something that you're doing at a very high volume, it really lends itself to that model. And when I say start small, think big, and iterate quickly, I mean start with, like, if you're going to do, let's say you're going to do divorces, do uncontested divorces in your specific jurisdiction. And maybe even don't, if there's county specific rules, stay in your county at first, test with your customers and get their feedback, and then build that out to be your full-fledged family law tool that has everything under the sun. But do that slowly so that you can gather feedback and implement feedback as you're going along.
That's a great answer. All right, we've had a few more come in. So one is, what advice do you have on finding the resources to create the tech tools?
So there are so many different tech tools out there. One of them is our platform, Documate, is a platform on which you can build out legal applications. If you go to documate.org, I can also put it in the chat for you guys. So what we've really focused on is creating a no-code platform, because when I think I told at the beginning, I was telling you guys we built this domestic violence platform to start with, and I am a lawyer and I'm not an engineer, and so I had to team up with my now co-founder, and he built out all of the technology tools. And so there are so many different no-code tools that can help you with this process, where you don't actually have to go hire and pay a developer tens of thousands of dollars. You can use, there's even WordPress has great front-end website builders, but I really love a tool called Webflow that allows you to build out the front end of your website. Zapier is really good to connect all your different tools. So if you have data coming into one of your applications and you want to pass it into, maybe you want to pass it into Clio or whatever your practice management system is, there are lots of tech tools online that you can connect together without having to hire an engineer to do that.
I put the link to Documate in the chat, and I'll try to pull up Zapier too. But those are great resources we'll try to include with our recording in that blog post. So just to jump back, let's see the next question. So what's the best way to go about creating these tech solutions? And I think you've kind of already answered that in a couple previous answers to some degree, but I'm not sure if there's anything more you want to say specifically to that.
In terms of, so best way to go about creating these types of solutions, it's really, I would call it like a 3-step process. So the first step of the process is before you build, scope and do your due diligence. What is your idea? And who are your customers? Have a very clear end user in mind, because your product might be great for many different types of users, but in the initial version, you want to build for your very specific user type. Is it the individual consumer? Is it a company? Think about that clearly, because that's really going to affect how you build out your product. Then it's during the build process, so step 2, where you're going to be thinking about how you phrase your questions. What are the documents that are going to be generated? What are the gateway questions? So gateway questions are questions you want to ask up front so that you can either kick people out of the process or ask them as few questions as possible, so that they're not sitting there answering. When you grab a court form, you often see every single question under the sun, and 90% of those might not be relevant to the litigant. So you want to do the opposite of that. Ask gateway questions and create something that's really efficient. And then the third phase of it, I would say, is the after building. And because you're not done, just because you build a software product doesn't mean that you're done building and you can sit back and relax. There's upkeep. You're going to need to test with users. You're going to want to keep it updated because the law changes on a frequent basis. And you're going to want to make sure that you're providing support and documentation on how to use your product or how to follow up after certain documents are created and generated.
Such a great answer. Thank you. All right, let's see the next question. So it sounds like a tech company can be set up as an LLC or corporation as opposed to the professional service entity. I
believe that's true, although I'm actually not 100% sure about that. So I would not quote me on that one. I don't know the answer to that one, no. But I've never gotten that question, so I'll look into that.
Fair enough. And also, probably something a business lawyer could advise best on.
Definitely.
Another question, are sites such as Upwork good places to hire app, website, or software product developers? I'll let you answer that, and also let that question asker know that we do have a list of a few referral sources for those things at LOMAP. So if you want to contact us directly, we can provide those. I'm not sure how well they'll fit. And then over to you on the answer about Upwork and sites like that.
Well, I would recommend going to Rachel's recommendations first, because I think that Upwork can be great and there are lots of great people on there, but you do need to sift through them sometimes. And so it's going to take some work to find the right person. But it is a great site. I mean, there are so many resources out there, so I definitely recommend going there. Fiverr is also one that I've heard a lot more about recently, so you might want to check that out. But a referral is always best. So if LOMAP has some resources, then that's probably the best place to start. And depending on what you're specifically looking for, I may be able to recommend people who've worked with some of our customers as well. So feel free. I'll just put my email in the chat in case anyone wants to in case there's someone that I can potentially refer you to as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for doing that. All right, so I think a similar question was asked to this, but if you can't create this type of software yourself, which type of vendors do you need to work with to get this type of business up and running, which I imagine is somewhat of a range, but I'll let you answer.
Definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it depends on which aspect of the software you don't have out of the box tools for. And that would dictate what type of vendor you want. So maybe you want a developer, maybe you want someone, probably a developer is, depending on what you're trying to add on and tack on to those types of services, is probably the best to guide you in the right direction. But I think that there are a lot of tools that you can use yourself and then bring in a developer to help you combine all of them together to remain cost efficient. But probably Upwork, Fiverr, or Lomaps resources would be a great place to look for those types of resources as well.
Great. All right, another question. Is there an app for an estate planning and trust practice that the client can go to and fill in client information needed to draft an estate plan, will, trust, power of attorney?
So there are tools that are out there. So for example, like Lavax has created one for their firm. But I'm not sure if the question is meant specifically for, like, I don't know if you are looking to use this for your firm or whether you're just curious about what other firms have done. If you're curious about what other firms have done, Lavax is an example. I mean, there are other sites like Trust and Will, I think, is another one that's gotten a lot of buzz recently. If you're using it for your own firm, I'll say two things. One is there's like things like Wealth Counsel, although the only thing is you won't necessarily be able to customize it all on your own. But they do have forms that are already set up for you. We have seen at Documate, we have a lot of attorneys, obviously, who are building out tools in different areas. And one of the things that we're planning on doing later this year is allowing our attorneys to share with each other. And if another Massachusetts attorney, for example, has built an estate planning tool, they would be able to share it with you. And actually, we may have someone already who can share that with you. So if you want to email me, I might be able to connect you, because I actually think I know someone in Massachusetts who's trying to make theirs public. So if you want to reach out to me, I can connect you with that individual, and maybe you guys can collaborate as well.
Such a tremendous resource, Dorna. Thank you so much. It looks like we've got one other question, which would be a good note to end on, which is, where can we get more information for a deeper understanding of these matters?
Yeah, definitely. So one place I would say is we have at Documate, we have like a YouTube page where we have some videos on different resources. So that's one place. A blog that I highly recommend is Law Sites. LAWSITES, and that's done by a legal blogger, Bob Ambrogi, and I think he's in Massachusetts, so very, very appropriate. Maybe many of you know him, but he has lots of great resources on these topics, and he's also very often writing about some of the legal ramifications. So he may be providing, this is an area that from the ethical perspective is constantly evolving. And so he's always doing blog posts on that, so you can stay up to date. And then just really keeping up on, exactly. And then just really keeping up on what are the newest rules in terms of legal ethics and the attorney-client relationship. I think those are two great resources.
Fantastic. Right, like I said, that seems a perfect note to end on, unless anyone drops in any questions in the next couple seconds. But in the meantime, I'll just say thank you so much. Just a tremendous presentation, Dorna. We've got just so much information, such an efficient presentation. And thank you so much for sharing your contact information with everyone and being so willing to connect folks with resources. So this presentation was recorded and it'll be provided to everyone who registered. And then our next installment of webinars for busy lawyers will be on May 5th, and that'll be presented by Sharon Nelson and John Simic of Sensei Enterprises, and they'll be sharing practical and budget-friendly cybersecurity tips for law firms. So that's another tremendously topical, relevant, and timely presentation we hope you'll join us for. Dorna, I'll turn it over to you for any closing remarks. Again, thank you.
Yes, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been great to be here. If anyone has any questions, I love talking about this topic, so feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to help you out and answer any further questions.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you all for being with us. Have a great day.
Talk soon.
All right, bye.